You know the music, time to dance. Well, pretty much what I'm gonna do is read this. Yeah, let's read. The play of Prince Hal Henry IV, Part 1. Henry IV, Part 1 might be reasonably be expected to be the subject of even more intense critical disagreement than other major Shakespearean plays. For one thing, it belonged to a genre, the history play, for which there exists no critical tradition compared to those devoted to tragedy and comedy. And for other, the world of the play offers so sweeping a prospect of private life and public, high and low, war and peace, and almost any critical reading seems likely to do an injustice to some parts of paranormal, and so challenge curiously, though the part actually enjoys some unusual strong critical conscious difference of opinions concerning particularly points of interpretations are plentiful, of course, but the vast majority of commentators are agreed on two major points. First, that the pivotal figure of the play, its title notwithstanding, is Prince Hal, and second, that the thematic pattern of the play is defined in terms of Hal's relationship to King Henry, Hotspur, and Falstaff. Two general interpretations of the play, agreed on the essential points, have won widespread acceptance to early of the two seems to derive originally from the observation made by Sir Arthur Coach in Shakespeare's workmanship. The whole of the business Coach suggests is built on the old morality structure imported through the interlude, why it might almost be labeled after the style of morality titled Consciento inter virtuum, et virtuum I'm gonna fucking try and read the French. Some years later, EMW Tillard reiterated this view. Never really seen reiterated right now. This view describing the center of the play as Hal's choice. Morality, fashion between sloth and vanity. Ooh, sins. To which he is drawn by his bad companions and chivalry. To which he is drawn by his father, his bad companions and chivalry. To which he is... Oh, I already read that. And his brother, more recently, the medieval monologue Cyclomia has tended to be displaced by the trendier Hegelian model of dialect, in which Hal mediates between the opposed and equally unacceptable ethical extremes of Hotspur and Falstaff, or possibly among the three extremes of Hotspur, Falstaff, and Henry. Most interpretations of Henry IV Part 1 offer variations on one or other of these views. Both of these favoured accounts of the play, however, are open to serious challenge and on the same two counts. First, the imposition of the modern emphasis on psychological development as the necessary basis of dramatic action, crucial distorts the nature of the play, devoted to discipline rather than developing the dimensions of a character fully. Fuck off! Your butt, you fucking shit, fucking face, little fucking clanker, little fucking Rather than developing the dimensions of a character fully formed and firmly established from the very beginning, Shakespeare seizes the earliest opportunity after all to reveal to the audience which is concealed from Henry for several acts and from full starts for 2 plays. However, alternating alienating? I never heard that one before. What is this? Alienating. Oh, okay. If I just, oh yeah, alienating some may find the soliloquy at the end of one. Surely it would be enough to subvert the inexplicably popular opinion. I say opinion. Notion of Hal as a prodigal son. As Peter Alexander says, could we imagine the prodigal face's departure with a statement which would assure us that he was going to enjoy just enough righteous living to make his father glad to see him home again? We should be nearer Prince Hal's case. Hal is not just J. Dover Wilson dubbed him a prodigal prince, but rather a protein prince. Wait, that's it. Oh! I know that word. I know that word. I know that word. That's a sin. It's the 6th terrace of purgatory. Oh ho 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 ho. Hell yeah, baby. What the fuck? No, just give me the... Look. It's... Here, look. Shush music. Look, the 6th terrace of purgatory. Whoa. Wait, has Slumbum actually said anything about what he's doing? No, they haven't. I actually don't know what it means or how to pronounce it, the word properly. Hold on. I actually don't know how to pronounce it.
Prodigality.
Prodigality. Okay, I've been saying it wrong. Prodigality. Spending money or using resources freely and recklessly, wastefully, and extravagantly. Okay, that makes sense. And that makes sense for Hal. Prodigality. That makes sense for Hal, and I get how that's a sin and the terrace of purgatory. I get it. Anyways, simply one of the number of guises he assumes and discards at will. This suggests that the second prevalent fallacy concerning Henry IV Part 1, the notion that the play involves a commitment on Hal's part to one role and a conscientious rejection of others. This belief imposes an unnecessary choice not just on Hal but on the reader, implicitly demanding that he decides which is the real Hal, the Hal of the tavern, the court, or the battlefield. But all of these are equally real, and to suggest otherwise is to miss the essential basis of Hal's heroic stature. There will come a time, of course, when a character named Hal will make a choice. Will turn into a character named Falstaff and say, "I know thee not, old man." But this is in another play, a lesser one, by general agreement. A part of a very dramatic structure, a pattern of Henry IV Part 2 is indeed that of a psychomaniac, with Hal facing an unavoidable and uncompromising choice between the valets represented by Falstaff and those represented by Lord Chief Justice. But the burdens of a king need to be forced prematurely on the prince. Hal Part 1 is a character quite as distinct in some ways from Henry V of Part 2 as Henry IV of Part 1 is distinct from the boiling brogue of Richard II. That does not mean, of course, that Henry IV Part 1 can be treated as an autonomous work like any other, no more directly related to Part 2 than it is to Hamlet, another play much considered with princes and kings, fathers and sons. Henry IV, as Harold Jerkins concludes at the end of the most balanced discussion of the structural problems, is both 1 play and 2. The relationship between the two parts is therefore inherently paradoxical. No doubt the central thematic concerns of Part 2, the burdened kingship, the necessity of choice, the emergence of man from behind the mask, are clearly foreshadowed at various points in Part 1, but these anticipations, however explicit, also offend to make offensive skill, redeeming time when men less think I will, and however powerful in context the context of Henry IV as a 10-act play are nevertheless not central to the structural pattern of Part 1 itself. In Part 2, the measure of the new king is his willingness to make the inevitable choice. In Part 1, the measure of the prince is precisely his refusal to make the choice, which his critiques both inside and outside the play are so anxious to impose upon him. His breadth and his versatility are what sets him apart from the lesser man. He is a man for all seasons, a player for all parts, and the former I wish to suggest by virtue of the latter. We can best understand Hal's character, that is, by taking the notion of his role-playing perfectly literally and approaching the problem rather obliquely, though a consideration of what might too easily be dismissed as relatively minor element in the play's design. Shakespeare use of theatrical metaphors. Theatrical metaphor is one of the few organizing images which have proven equally invaluable to the 6th century and the 20th. Why couldn't I read 20th? God, sometimes I think, can I actually read? The notion of social orders, theatre and human behavior as role-playing, a conceit so commonplace in the social sciences, pseudosciences and journalism of our time that it has lost much of its metaphorical force, was just as prominent 400 years ago. The theatrical metaphor pervaded Elizabethan sermons years ago. Sermons and songbooks, chronicles and popular pamphlets, as Anne Rider was written and was used in a multitude of ways to describe the nature of deceivers, the splendor of man's life and its transience, the these are some big words for me, inexorability of fortune, and the character of individual moments of time. In Shakespeare's work, this metaphor manifests itself not only in the form of those explicit sentient with which everyone is tenuously familiar. All the world's a stage, man's but a poor player, but also, and far more importantly, as an organizing principle in the action of plays themselves, and in plays, interestingly, both tragic and comic. The most explicit expression of the theatrical metaphor of instance the play with the play is equally critical to Hamlet and A Midsummer Night's Dream. Not surprisingly, a metaphor adaptable to such different dramatic modes proves particularly useful in the play of mixed modes like Henry IV Part 1. The theatrical metaphor may have been more explicit in other plays, but it is now here. Oh, there's no how that hurt. Is nowhere more persuasive nor more profound in its influence than in Henry IV Part 1. Scarcely a character in the play is left untouched by it. All our players all assume roles. The most covert roles of all of such, of course, is that of kingship. At various times and in various senses, the player kings include Hal, Falstaff, Mortimer, Sir Walter, Blunt, and Henry himself. The reason for the association of kingship and theatrical are obvious enough. Not only has the act of usurpation by its very nature inevitably redefined kingship as part to which a player may aspire rather than identity with which he is divinely endowed, but both Hotspur and Henry IV himself enjoyed on different occasions the theatrical qualities of Boiling Broach conduct in the past. The sense is that he was a dissembler who cleverly created himself as a role of king. Crucially, as his political dimension of theatrical metaphor is, however, is ultimately only one element in a more complex design. Like everything else in the play, the theatrical metaphor is characterized by its remarkable heterogeneity, and the association of king and actor is only one of a number of avenues by which the metaphor enters the play. A different set of theatrical connotations occur around the figure of Falstaff. Falstaff's origin, conveniently summarized by James Callenderwood, are theatrical illiteracy, the vice of morality and tradition, the malice of glorious and witty parasite, of pouting comedy, the clown, fool, butt, sponger, mocker, glutton of 1,000 plays, and Aristophanes, the anonymous author of the famous victories of Henry V, so complex that the heritage resists easy labeling, but perhaps the dominant element in Falstaff's resists easy labeling, but oh, I just read that. Fuck, I struggle to sometimes go to the next line, I don't know why. Make up the common denominator between the very different traditions of the Pauline parasite and the morality vice is the role of the trickster. A third variation on the theatrical metaphor is suggesting, rather surprisingly given his professed hostility to poetry and music, by Hotspur, if less obviously than Henry and Falstaff. However, Hotspur is just essentially the player of the other part. Hotspur is unmistakably a hero in Aeropic mode. For him, quite as such unmistakable a hero in an a hero in warrior heroic honor is erect, a quality to be publicly acquired and publicly displayed, a role played in other. I just gotta write something down because something just came to my head and I gotta write it down or I'm gonna forget because I have the memory of a goldfish. And why is my font changed on sticky note? What the fuck? words and one which he plays with grateful self-conscious. The theatrical metaphor in Henry IV Part 1 then is an amalgamy of three distinct elements, which with its own literary tradition, and each chiefly embodied in a different character. The political as actor represented by Henry, the trickster as actor represented by Falstaff, and the hero as actor represented by Hotspur. As these three lines develop and interrelated in course of play, they precede a structuring metaphor of considerable complexity and power. Because this metaphor is so persuasive, it may be useful to consider somewhat more closely two scenes in which it becomes particularly explicit. Second, the scene of the play Extra, in which Hal and Falstaff take turns at impersonating Henry, and second, the penultimate scene, I do know that word, the scene of a long-awaited showdown between Hal and Hotspur. Oh wait, no, I think these numbers are just the act number. Act 2 and Act 5. Okay, I finally get it. I get it. Yeah, I don't think I'm going to be able to finish reading this in the stream. But we'll read as much as we can. Okay, our boss rolls up to. Fuck. I thought the first line of the next page was that verse, and it clearly isn't. So I've read this page, I remember reading that page. Oh no, it's not the page, it's the paragraph. At first glance, these two scenes may seem to have singularly little in common. The later scenes is full of physical action, the most violent sort, and clearly constitutes the climax of the entire play. The earlier scene, in contrast, although the longest in the play, is one in which nothing much at all seems to happen. It relates back to the Gad's Hill robbery in scene 2, and forward to Hal's confrontation with Henry in scene 3. But in terms of narrative development of more obvious sort, it is virtually gratuitous more than that. It feels like an interlude, somewhat enchanted, as Anne Rider says, a period of suspended time in which the violence of and rebellion abroad in the world outside seems curiously remote. Both scenes involve role playing, of course, but even that takes radical difference from which the two scenes in the earlier. It may seem, at least initially, a retreat from the more urgent demands of life, whereas in the later it is unremarkably a matter of life and death. For it is counterfeiting that saves Falstaff's life, and it costs Sir Walter Bolt his. For all higher differences, though both scenes are thoroughly dominated by the theatrical metaphor, and both it is handled in surprisingly and revealing similar ways. In both scenes, for instance, the theatrical metaphor is sufficiently explicit and to provoke in the audience, if nothing approaching the reaction's effect, at least a certain consciousness of the innate complexities of the theatrical experience, like any other with play within a play. The play extra in scene 2, no, act 2, constructs an elaborate set of concentric circles which inevitably calls into question the simplistic dichotomy which the illusion of the stage world and the reality of the audience. In this case, the audience confronts the potentially dizzying the spectacle of an actor playing Hal, playing the part of the madcap prince, first playing himself, then his father. In the latter scenes, Shakespeare juggles with the theatrical illusion even more precariously, particularly when the resurrected Falstaff, about to stab Hotspur's corpse, attempts to justify himself by asking, "Why may not he rise as well as I?" Sigurd, oh god, that is a last name, voices the reflection which must surely occur to many members of the audience, if only seeming semi-consciously. So it does, and certainly Falstaff subsequent remarks that nothing confutes me but eyes and nobody sees me, address directly to the spectators in the audience, would scarcely have been calculated to do otherwise. The problem with the metadramatic reflections of this sort, however, is that they tend to tempt us away from the specifics of the text to a consideration of the general nature of the theatrical experience per se. There are other aspects of the theatrical metaphor in these two scenes, however, which led us directly back to the particularities of Henry IV Part 1. We might notice, for instance, that the role-playing in the scenes and in the play generally tend to be particularly individual in nature, unrehearsed experience. Oh my god, like the play with the play itself, the sort of theatrical we might reasonably expect of a political play. The sort we find in Richard II, for instance, is a different and more formal kind, and a kind more common in the drama of the period. No other era of the English stage, as Thomas Stroop says, has been so rich in ceremony for formalized entrances and exits, the caboose, or gradually in general. Henry IV Part 1 has its share of this sort of ceremonial theatrically. Of course, characters commonly enter or exit by way of formal procession, and the first action of the play indeed is Henry's highly formal announcement of his intention to undertake a crusade to the Holy Land. Significantly, though, nothing ever comes of Henry's declaration, and that itself characterizes the play as the successful role-playing of Henry IV. Part 1 takes the form not of an attempt to impose a predetermination order on reality, nor to evade the reality, but rather to improvisation responds to the constantly changing order of things in the final act. Sir Walter Blunt's counterfeiting of the king is deliberately premeditated and fatal, whereas Falstaff's counterfeiting of death is spontaneous, intensity of his own terms, and triumphantly successful. Alright, well, I guess I'll stop it there. It's been half an hour usually the stream, so yeah, make sure to subscribe, go follow, or if you're watching on Twitch, follow it on Twitch, and go subscribe, and go follow me on TikTok. My TikTok is back online, JabioTT, links in the description for that. So yeah, I'll see you guys in an hour and a half when I'm playing Helldivers 2 on Jabio Play. So yeah, make sure you subscribe to Jabio Plays as well. Goodbye.